Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today doing a Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon deck profile. So I'm really excited to do some for you guys because this deck is an extremely powerful deck that can OTK your opponent extremely easily. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Getting your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. This card is our main boss monster that comes out at 4,000 attack points and cannot be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Also, if this card attacks a defensive monster, inflict double piercing damage to your opponent, doing 8,000 damage to the opponent if it attacks into a 0 defense point monster, which we have easy ways of doing that in this build. This card is really good as a 3-of in the deck to be able to summon out to your side of the field and just go in for game. We then play a single copy of Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon. Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon is really good as a 1-of in the build, and this card helps out a lot because if this card is ritual summoned using a Blue Eyes White Dragon, when it declares an attack, you can change the battle position of as many monsters that your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, the attack event of the changed monsters becomes 0. Also, this turn, if this card attacks, it does piercing damage, which is a great ability to help you go in for game, and also reduce the defense points of one of your opponent's monsters down to 0, and switch it to defense position, so you can swing in with your copy of Chaos Max and go in for game. We then play 2 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. This card is a key combo piece in the deck, and it's just really good in the deck as a 2-of to basically help you go in for your copy of Chaos Max. We then play a single copy of Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon. This card is really cool as a 1-of because it is searchable off your copy of Melody, and you can just reveal a copy of Blue Eyes to summon this card out to your side of the field to get an additional 3,000 attack point monster on the field, and also once per turn you can target a monster that your opponent controls and destroy it, but this card cannot attack the turn you activate that effect. We then play 3 copies of Trillion Hands. Trillion Hands is really good as a 3-of in the build to be able to play it in the deck because this card has a great effect that if this card is summoned, you actually get to add a ritual monster and a ritual spell from your deck to your hand, which is an amazing effect to instantly get to the exact cards that you need, with this card's effect essentially setting up for your copy of your Chaos Max. Plus, this is the only normal summon in the entire deck, so this card is amazing to be able to play in the build to basically just summon out to your side of the field and get a ritual spell and a ritual monster. We then play 3 copies of Talismandra. Talismandra is really good as a 3-of in the build, and all of your different incantation monsters require you to reveal either a ritual monster or a ritual spell to special summon this card from the hand, and then special summon an additional incantation from the deck. This card's unique ability is that you reveal a ritual monster to be able to special summon this card and an incantation from the deck, and if this card is special summoned from the deck, you get to add a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. We then play 3 copies of Kandal. Kandal does the exact same thing as your copy of your Talismandra, but this card has the ability to add a ritual spell from your deck to your hand instead of adding a ritual monster, and you have to reveal a ritual spell to be able to summon this card out to your side of the field. This card is really good to be able to play in the deck and just an amazing 3-of overall in the build. We then play a single copy of Bookstone. Bookstone is really good in the build as 1-of. You can actually reveal a ritual spell to special summon this card from your hand, and if this card is special summoned from the deck, you get to actually target a ritual spell in the graveyard and add it to your hand. We then play a single copy of Pencil Plume. Pencil Plume is great as a 1-of in the build to basically add a copy of a ritual monster back from the graveyard to your hand, just like your copy of Bookstone grabbing a ritual spell from the graveyard. We then play a single copy of Dogmatica Ecclesia. The Dogmatica engine is extremely spicy in this build, as it helps you actually summon out a copy of Winda if you go first, and it's very important to be able to do that in the deck so you can actually go first in this deck. This card has the ability, if it's summoned to your side of the field, you actually get to add a Dogmatica card from your deck to your hand, which you always want to grab your copy of Maximus if you don't already have it. Maximus is one of the most important cards in the entire deck, because this card helps you summon out your copy of Winda by sending a Pokemon to the graveyard and then using a Pokemon's effect to grab your copy of Schism directly from your deck to your hand, which is very important to be able to do. This card has the ability that you can actually banish a Fusion, Synchro, Exi, or Link monster from the graveyard to special summon this card from the hand, and also during your main phase, you can activate this effect to send 2 monsters with different names from your X deck to the graveyard, which is a really cool effect to instantly send those cards to the grave. Also, your opponent sends 2 monsters from the graveyard graveyard, from their extra deck to the graveyard as well, which is a pretty cool effect to instantly get cards out of your opponent's extra deck as well, while also getting cards like Herald of the Arclight and a Pokelone from our extra deck to the graveyard so we can use their effects to get searches. We then play a single copy of Fleur de Lis. Fleur de Lis is great as a 1-of and basically is an imperm on legs. It's just really good to be able to play in the deck as a 1-of because it is searchable off your copy of Ecclesia. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with 2 copies of Chaos Form. Chaos Form is definitely a 2-of in the build to help us ritual summon out our copy of our Blue Eyes Chaos Max. By using a copy of a Blue Eyes White Dragon, we can actually banish it from the graveyard to be able to summon out our copy of our Chaos Max, or we can just use monsters on our field or in our hand to be able to summon out a copy of our Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. But it's really cool to be able to banish Blue Eyes White Dragon from the graveyard to summon out our copy of our Chaos Dragons. We then play 3 copies of Advanced Ritual Art. Advanced Ritual Art is amazing because we can actually send a Blue Eyes White Dragon from our deck to the graveyard to summon out our copy of our Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. We then play 3 copies of the Melody of Awakening Dragon. Melody is definitely a 3-of in the deck to be able to search out our dragons directly from our deck to hand. By discarding a card, we can add up to 2 dragon type monsters with 3,000 or more attack and 2,500 or less defense from our deck to our hand, instantly getting to our copy of Alternative White, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Chaos Max, or Chaos Dragon, which is so cool to instantly get to those cards off this card's effect. We then play 3 copies of Xian Spy. Xian Spy is really good as a 3-of in the deck. It's basically use this card to hand our opponent a copy of our Incantation. Because they have 0 attack and defense points, we can actually special summon them to our side of the field in defense position, use Xian Spy, hand them to the opponent, and then use Chaos Max to swing in for game into the Incantation we just handed our opponent with Xian Spy's ability. Xian Spy is one of my favorite cards in the entire deck, and just breaks this deck because of how easy it is to be able to activate this card, give our opponent a defense position monster has 0 defense, and swing into it, going in for 8,000 damage. We then play 3 copies of Nadir. Nadir is really good as a 3-of in the deck to be able to search out your copy of Maximus or Ecclesia, because you can actually send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then add a Dogmatica monster or a Fallen of Albaz from your deck or graveyard to your hand that has attack less than or equal to the sent monsters in the graveyard, which is a really cool effect to instantly use this card's ability to search out our copy of our Ecclesia or our copy of Maximus directly from our deck to our hand. By sending the Tri-Brigade Arms to the graveyard, you can then send a copy of Garua to the graveyard, so you can guarantee that you draw a card and have a card in the graveyard left behind after you summon out your copy of Maximus, so that when you use Maximus's effect to be able to send Arclight and a copy of a Pokelone to the graveyard, you'll still have a dark target in the graveyard because you sent 2 off this card's effect by sending Tri-Brigade Arms. Tri-Brigade Arms will send Garua. Garua will let you draw a card, search out your copy of Maximus, and then banish your copy of either of the 2 monsters that are in the graveyard. You'll summon out Maximus, send Arclight and your copy of a Pokelone to the graveyard, get your searches, and then go off into a copy of Window, which is so easy to do. We then play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplets. Droplets is so important for this deck to basically just drop this card and turn your opponent's field off so we can go in for an OTK, plus it halves the attack points and monsters, and it's just really good in the deck overall. We then play 3 copies of Book of Eclipse. Book of Eclipse is really good as a 3-of in the build to basically just flip all of your opponent's monsters face down, especially with our big boss monster doing double piercing damage. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 1, and that's going to be a single copy of Shadow Schism. Shadow Schism's in the deck so we can actually go first because Nadir plus any other card in our hand is basically a copy of Window, which is absolutely amazing. Because basically what you do is you activate Nadir, send a copy of the Tri-Brigade Arms from your deck to the graveyard, and once you send Tri-Brigade Arms to the graveyard, this card will let you send an additional Wing Beast from your deck to the graveyard, which is going to be your copy of Grill, which will let you draw a card, and then you can basically search out your copy of Maximus and go from there to be able to send a Pokelone and your copy of Arclight to the graveyard, so you can search out this card off of Pokelone's effect, which is amazing, and guarantee you have a dark monster plus a Pokelone in the graveyard because of the Tri-Brigade arms getting an additional dark monster in the graveyard. So you can summon out Maximus and then set this card to your side of the field, so you can basically use its ability that during the main phase, you can fusion summon a Shadow Fusion monster from your X deck by banishing its materials listed on it from the field or the graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Then you can send a monster for the graveyard that your opponent controls with the same attribute as the fusion summon monster, which will be dark, which is pretty easy to be able to get a card into the graveyard, but it locks down the opponent so they can only special summon once when you summon out the copy of Winda, giving this deck a great option to go first. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start with a single copy of number 97. Number 97 is really good just as an option in the deck to be able to summon out either a copy of number 38, which is a spell negate, or a copy of number 100, which comes out as a 9,000 attack point boss monster to help you swing in for game. And my single copy of Dingirsu. Dingirsu is really good as a 1M in the deck to be able to send a card to the graveyard when it's summoned. One copy of Zeus just as an option because you make Zeus on top of your copy of your Dingirsu, which is just a really good option to be able to do so that you can basically board wipe the field. With my single copy of Typhon. Typhon's amazing in the deck because it just works in every single deck in the game to basically just summon out to your side of the field just in case you need it. With my 2 copies of Herald of Arclight. Herald of Arclight is really good in the deck to be able to search out ritual monsters or ritual spells when it touches the graveyard. 1 copy of Wind Pegasus to be able to spin cards off the field. 1 copy of Elder Antagonist, and a single copy of the Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. Fossil Warrior Skull Knight, your copy of Elder Antagonist, and Wind Pegasus are just spot removal cards that you can send to the graveyard off your copy of Maximus or off the copy of your Nadir. And then a single copy of a Pokelone. A Pokelone is really important for its second effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can actually add a shadow card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, then discard a card which will search out your copy of Schism. Then you can set your copy of Schism with this card in the graveyard, and any dark monster plus this card being banished will actually summon out a copy of Winda. So if you do go first, it's very easy to establish a copy of Winda on your side of the field. Basically just stop their opponent in their tracks so they won't special summon a bunch of times, and we can OTK with their copy of our Chaos Max. We made a single copy of Gorilla so we can draw a card when it touches the graveyard, and then a single copy of the Tri-Brigade arms, because when this card touches the graveyard, we send Gorilla, basically just giving us an additional card in the graveyard to be able to banish off our copy of Maximus, giving us 2 monsters in the graveyard, so we can banish 1 for our copy of Maximus, and then have a second one in the graveyard so we can banish it with a Pokelone, plus this card to make our copy of Winda, which is so cool to be able to do. So, that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play, in a really interesting way to actually play Chaos Max that can actually go first, which is really interesting for this build, to be able to actually go first using your copy of Winda, but you do primarily want to go second to be able to OTK the opponent, but it's still a really interesting strategy. So that's it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell and there so you can become part of notification squad. I'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.